Well, let's find out, shall we? As we jump into this game one, we'll see exactly what these players have decided to bring forth for this very first game of the set. And for Yuri, it's going to be Excadrill and Amoonguss. And when we take a look at Antonio's side of the field, Corviknight and Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, Corviknight, once again, this is why I've been hyping it up going into the set. It is in a tremendous position right now. We know it has that Lumberry as well, so it doesn't even have to worry about Spore from Amoonguss. Grimmsnarl has that taunt instantly Amoonguss as well. So, you're able to do so much here, and I love the decision to bulk up immediately because, after a single bulk up, you just do so much more damage. Of course, Grimmsnarl here could opt for a taunt onto Amoonguss. Yuri, however, knows the movesets that Antonio has. He might be wary of the taunt, and so even if you go for a Spore, you'd have to pretty much target the Grimmsnarl or just consume the Lumberry from the Corviknight's end. Grimmsnarl here just really has so many options, and I think, if you're worried about Swords Dance from the Excadrill, which looks like Antonio recognizes, gonna want to taunt that. So Amoonguss switching out here works out even better, and there's the Rotom, exactly the counter you kind of need to beat this Corviknight.
Absolutely, taunt comes through onto the Excadrill, so see what this Excadrill decides to do. It can't use the Swords Dance now, so all of that setup that Yuri was going for is now mute point, as we do see setup coming through from Antonio's team.
Yeah, this is super interesting because now you're facing down a Rotom, right? Corviknight and Grimmsnarl don't actually really put very much offensive pressure against the Rotom. Excadrill, nice taunt there to prevent it from Swords Dancing because the Swords Dance means that you don't even have to max Excadrill. You can do a lot of damage with like Iron Head. So now I think Antonio has to be really, really scared of just Rotom going for Electro type attack into that slot. But he's going for a hard call out here. He's just going for a taunt. Oh my goodness! And I think he's gonna get it. Rotom's not maxing here.
Rotom's not maxing, so what does that mean that this Rotom's going to be able to do as Excadrill goes for the Iron Head? Grimmsnarl is going to get knocked out after using the taunt with that critical hit, but I'm so curious to see what this Rotom was trying to do.
Okay.
It goes for the Thunderbolt.
I thought he was really gonna go for a hard call out there. That's so much damage now, but at least you get the Amoonguss in and you can redirect attacks away. So I think Yuri making a great play there, doesn't want to get greedy and go for a nasty plot if he potentially has it. Recognizes, I kind of need just damage onto the Corviknight immediately. So I think Corviknight taking so much makes this substantially more difficult, but at least you can now bring out Amoonguss and probably just go for something like a Rage Powder and a Roost. A double up there onto the Amoonguss. Yeah, I thought that was really risky from Antonio's end because specifically if Rotom just Thunderbolts there, you take so much damage on Corviknight, which feels like one of the main win conditions in this set. Amoonguss is never really going to be doing very much other than redirection. It's great support, but not great in terms of damage. So what do you go for here, right? You could go for a Rage Powder with Amoonguss. Corviknight could go for a Roost and basically just spend 2 turns healing up. Looks like that is the option that Antonio's opting for. Maybe he's comfortable with that. And this is an option. Wow.
Ooh. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say,
power play.
Considering the Dynamax with 38 HP, I think definitely pretty risky there. So he was considering it, but looks like he's gonna opt for the Roost anyway. I think great play on Yuri's end to not get greedy once again, just go for a Thunderbolt. And Yuri's actually gonna commit the Dynamax to the Rotom here. So Antonio could maybe come back in this one if he's able to stall out all these max turns from Rotom, heal all the way back up with Corviknight. You get a bunch of Roosts off, redirect all the attacks away with Rage Powder, and then finally Dynamax Corviknight in this late game.
Dynamaxing Corviknight and keeping Corviknight alive is going to be a win condition here as Amoonguss goes to the Rage Powder to try to direct away any of those attacks from Rotom away from this Corviknight as Excadrill goes for the Iron Head. So does a decent chunk of damage here, but Max Lightning now coming through, which is not going to be super effective onto this Amoonguss. So the Rage Powder was definitely a really good call from Antonio's end to try to direct those attacks away.
Yeah, exactly. Going for the safe play there, pretty much no reason not to. Neither Rotom nor Excadrill actually really threaten Amoonguss with that much damage. Still able to do 50%, over 50% importantly though. So another double up will potentially pick up the knockout. So this makes this next turn really interesting. Excadrill's taunt wears off, so you have to be a little bit wary of it potentially setting up a Swords Dance. Now, the safe play from Antonio's end is to just go for another, Roost and Rage Powder. But if you actually go for that, do you have enough time to win this game? Because then the Corviknight, sure, is healed all the way back up, but you still have to worry about Rotom doing so much damage. And I think, Amoonguss here could potentially consider a Protect or a Switch out. And wow, this is an interesting option. I was going to say, Corviknight switching out into Gastron, you give up all those boosts, and effectively you've lost all your early game for nothing, but looks like he's actually considering, you can Spore the Rotom here, and basically this is a hard call-out, saying Yuri's going to double up onto the Corviknight. He's not going to respect the Amoonguss because Corviknight's such a big threat, and this is such a big play. You know, it's so risky to just switch out after getting all those boosts off. Here's high horsepower. Is that enough to pick up the knockout? Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so Amoonguss is going to go down here, but the Gastrodon gets a chance to come in, so the Max Lightning is not going to be able to affect that Gastrodon as Rotom shakes off the taunt now.
Yeah, I mean, this is still so tricky because I'm just wondering how Antonio deals with the Rotom damage-wise at this point, right? Like, you could max the Corviknight and max guard this turn, but then Rotom can just Thunderbolt the subsequent turn. I think Rotom here is always going to be content launching a Max Lightning into the Corviknight slot. Excadrill, as we saw, Yuri is running a weakness policy set, and wow, it's actually just going to be a Roost coming out. But I don't know. I mean, Antonio just hasn't done any damage, and he spent those first 2 turns getting those bulk ups off, you know, just to really not get any mileage here in this late game. So I think recognizing, hey, this Corviknight doesn't do any damage against the Gastrodon. At least one win condition you can go for with the Gastrodon is just get a bunch of max quick boosts off. Recognizes I'm just going to sacrifice the Corviknight and try to play the 4v1 with Gastrodon, which admittedly I think is going to be very difficult to come out of because Amoonguss, of course, once the electric terrain is gone, can just put the Gastrodon to sleep.
Gastrodon gonna be able to take the Dynamax factor as Excadrill goes for the high horsepower, so just trying to chip away at some of that HP as the Max Lightning now comes through for Corviknight, and unfortunately that's gonna be it for the Corviknight here. So it's Gastrodon now in this scenario where it has to be able to knock out all of Yuri's Pokemon.
I actually think really would have liked to see Yuri protect or switch out the Excadrill in this position, because if you actually look at Yuri's team, one of the big questions I have is, does the Amoonguss have Giga Drain? If not, then Amoonguss and Rotom actually don't do any damage against the Gastrodon. So then it actually kind of comes down to what Yuri's last Pokemon is, and this is kind of crazy, but I could actually see Gastrodon pulling the 4v1 comeback here, because Rotom, unless it has Dark Pulse or something like Shadow Ball, which are both, you know, not exactly super common, it's actually completely useless against the Gastrodon. So it's all about the Amoonguss to me here, and I'm surprised Yuri brought it out immediately, because right now, by having it out, you cannot go for a Spore. At least you can, you know, protect this turn to, you know, mitigate the damage. But I think I really would have liked to see Excadrill switch out there last turn, because it's good late game damage. But oh, I really like this play, the bait of Earth Power, brilliant.
That's super, super brilliant, because that leaves Yuri free to go for this nasty plot boost now that the taunt is gone onto the Rotom, which really might give Yuri a good shot against this Gastrodon.
Yeah, I was thinking if Dragapult's the last one and like Amoonguss doesn't have a grass type attack, then maybe Gastrodon could pull it off, but I think it just got a lot harder now after a brilliant defensive switch. I was curious why he brought out Amoonguss in the first place, and that's the exact answer why, right? Rotom going for the nasty plot there. You know, you're not going to get any mileage off with Hydro Pump or Thunderbolt. I'm really curious if it does have, like, Dark Pulse or Shadow Ball. But either way, I think a fantastic couple of turns here by Yuri to just, you know, safely bring in 2 Pokemon that match up pretty well here. And, you know, it's the Max Geyser coming out, so this Gastrodon isn't able to get all these special defense boosts. Now with the Amoonguss out, all you have to do is just keep clicking Rage Powder, and then, you know, the Togekiss can slowly chip away at the Gastrodon. I'm kind of curious about what kind of Togekiss set it is. You know, is it a critical hit set with Scope Lens? Does it have Yawn? If so, you can put the Gastrodon to sleep. But with Electric Terrain disappearing now, and yeah, with Yuri having Togekiss in the back, you know, having good answers to the Gastrodon outside of just, you know, one Pokemon, I think is really valuable here. So I think it's going to be really, really tough for Gastrodon to pull it off now, especially because if there was any way it had a shot, it needed to probably get 3 Max Quake boosts, but Yuri played so well with that switch out, and then, yeah, switching out Rotom into Amoonguss because Rotom's really useless now, you know, so much pressure onto the Gastrodon slot.
Yeah, bringing in the Amoonguss as bait for the Togekiss switch-in is just so impactful in this game because it completely denied that special defense boost for Gastrodon. And I am super curious about what this Amoonguss is going to do now. I mean, Yuri gave up that Nasty Plot boost, and we'll be able to go for the Rage Powder here onto the Amoonguss that's now in that Rotom slot. But Togekiss just goes for a Dazzling Gleam, and it does a hefty amount of damage. Might be a critical hit set.
Yeah, it looks like it. A lot of damage there, and that's very critical to get through the special defense boost on the Gastrodon as well. But, you know, the Rage Powder there is safe. You don't want to get hit by, like, a Scald in Rain in general on Togekiss, and it would be a disaster if you know, if the critical hit comes out or a burn comes out. However, Amoonguss opting for these Rage Powders makes me think maybe it doesn't have Giga Drain. You know, sometimes players opt for Pollen Puff, as we've previously seen, or a Sludge Bomb. If there's no Giga Drain, I mean, this could get a little bit tougher. The fact that Togekiss is most likely that critical hit set, though, means that, you know, you just get another couple of critical hits, and there's not very much Gastrodon can do. I think what Gastrodon wants to hope for now is basically for Yuri to keep failing crits and get multiple recovers off. But it's still really, really tough because it's 3 versus 1, right? I think Amoonguss could also just opt for a Spore as soon. And yeah, it looks like, wants to go for the Spore immediately to shut it down. There it is.
Yeah, there's the Spore. Just going to be able to shut down Gastrodon. So Gastrodon's not going to be able to go for the recover. And you could see from the amount of damage that Gastrodon is able to take from the critical hit. And then without the critical hit from the Dazzling Gleam, Togekiss is going to be able to get this knockout soon.
Exactly, yeah, I mean, the Amoonguss is also faster than the Gastrodon, so I think like a Dazzling Gleam plus whatever attack Amoonguss does have might just be enough to pick up the knockout even without a crit. But it's like, even if you manage to survive, Gastrodon's just clicking Recover anyway, it has no damage against the Amoonguss. I mean, you can Earth Power for maybe like 30-35%, but that's pretty much it. So it was really critical, though, I think, that Yuri did end up having that Togekiss. It allowed him to get a free switch, and Instamax Quakes means that the Gastrodon can't really boost up. And once again, I think, Antonio has played very, very defensively for the most part, but in this first couple of turns, in the face of Rotom Wash, he just tried to get a second bulk up off. And you can respect that, because I think he was expecting Rotom. Okay, Gastrodon manages to wake up.
Yeah, but I feel like it's just prolonging the inevitable at this point. Maybe hoping that Yuri gets maybe a miss here or there, sees the Sludge Bomb come through from the Amoonguss as well, so that would have been a little bit more damage just to be able to knock out this Gastrodon. I mean, you gotta give credit to Antonio for trying.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, there's no reason to not use this time to think of a game plan going into the subsequent game as well, right? So I think, Yuri actually revealing that he does have that Sludge Bomb. So not the Giga Drain option that you often see on Amoonguss. And Sludge Bomb obviously hits a lot of the common Fairy-type Pokemon out there, like Togekiss. So I think now, Rain is getting stalled out as well. Gastrodon's just never really going to have enough damage here. So Antonio just using, this time to kind of collect his thoughts, think about what his game plan should be, because once again, Corviknight is so good against Yuri's team. Like, it pretty much beats everything bar the Rotom, and you can see that's why Yuri made the adjustment instead of running the Tyranitar. Okay, Gastrodon gets a double off.
Gets the double, so Antonio gets a little bit more time to think about that game plan moving into the next game of this set. And I think, more importantly, you're really starting to see how Yuri wants to try to win out this first game as well. So I think that gives just a little bit more information to Antonio about, what is Yuri's game plan and how can I adjust moving forward.
Yeah, and I don't think there's really any way for Antonio to win right now. So, we can start kind of thinking about going into this subsequent game and what the game plan is. To me, it's all about protecting Corviknight. Something like Corviknight and Amoonguss is really interesting because Amoonguss is, I think, one of the best things to support the Corviknight. You can pressure the Rotom and put it to sleep with the Spore. You can redirect those attacks away. So to me, I think like Amoonguss is a really, really critical Pokemon. And Antonio looked like he had a really fancy turn 1 of this set, of this game, but it didn't really get him anywhere, and that's the one problem, right? Bulk Up Corviknight is a really, really good win condition most of the time, but it's not going to like going up against these special attacks as a Triple Protect fails finally. So like you said, Rosemary delaying the inevitable, but a Dazzling Gleam there will seal up the deal. So I think once again, I mean, Corviknight is certainly a great win condition to play around. You just really need to protect it accordingly. I think as you'll see, Antonio's team kind of struggles offensive-wise against Rotom, so you need to shut it down either through Amoonguss or maybe dunking on it with Dracozolt. So it's going to be Excadrill and Rotom. This time around, Yuri, leading a little bit more offensively, and there's the Corviknight Amoonguss. I think that's the exact adjustment that needed to be made here. So this time around, a lot easier for Corviknight to thrive. And what makes this really tricky is, you can go for a bulk up immediately. This time around, you maybe just want to start dishing out damage as well. However, I think Corviknight's struggle in this position specifically is like it cannot do a lot of damage into the Rotom slot. So I think what's more important this time around for Antonio's end is you actually just want to put the Rotom to sleep and then get the Corviknight set up. Maybe don't opt for a bulk up early on. That's exactly why he's considering this switch out into the Gastrodon here in the back. And I love the Arcanine adjustment, being able to get Will-O-Wisp off as well. So really difficult to actually prevent a Spore onto Rotom. Of course, looks like Antonio might read into Yuri protecting Rotom or switching out into his own Amoonguss, because of course you have to respect the Swords Dance threat from Excadrill. If you whiff it into the Amoonguss, a Spore into that, and Excadrill Swords Dances, that's really bad. But Yuri actually switching out into Togekiss immediately.
Yeah,
Oh.
and maybe trying. Oh, yeah, actually doing a whole double switch here. So Togekiss and Amoonguss now on the field. Maybe predicting that Antonio was going to bring this Corviknight back into its Pokeball. Really interesting decision by Yuri to just go ahead and reveal all 4 Pokemon here.
Let's see. We know the Spore went into the Excadrill slot, so I think fantastic call out by Antonio there, recognizing there's no way Yuri's ever going to let me put the Rotom to sleep on turn 1. And if anything, like, you're probably going to switch it out, and there's probably going to be an Amoonguss in the back, so that's actually so huge, because if the Spore whiffed into the Amoonguss slot, Yuri probably could have just gone for a Dynamax with the Togekiss and start getting a lot of damage off with max Airstreams. Now, Togekiss has to take a guaranteed turn of sleep the subsequent turn, and so, you know, Antonio now can start doing a little bit of damage. He needs to really conserve the Amoonguss, but putting Togekiss to sleep is actually so pivotal, because that's the only thing that actually threatens the Amoonguss. Now, Amoonguss can just Spore everything on Yuri's team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sludge Bomb not going to be able to affect this Excadrill as Yuri's Amoonguss now goes for a Spore onto the Gastrodon. So that's one of the slowest Pokemon on the field. Gastrodon's not going to be able to do anything this turn either, taking its mandatory turn of sleep already.
Yeah, so this is interesting. You know, Excadrill comes out now. You could pressure with something like a Swords Dance, but of course Amoonguss can always just Spore into that slot anyway. A great defensive switch by Yuri this last turn. I mean, I think Yuri can, you know, think about switching Excadrill back out into Togekiss, but then what mileage have you really gotten off? Because you haven't burnt any turns of sleep. The Gastrodon, if anything, will just burn a turn of sleep by itself, but yeah, looks like that's the play he's considering going for. And there's Togekiss.
Yeah, yeah, here comes Togekiss already asleep, so this Spore is not going to be able to do too much. It's just honestly buying some time for this Gastrodon to wake back up on Antonio's side, as we do see Yuri's Amoonguss now go for a Sludge Bomb into Antonio's Amoonguss. Gastrodon takes a second turn of sleep.
Yeah, that's a sizable amount of damage on Amoonguss, though, right? Like, basically, Yuri's win condition is knock out Amoonguss, and then Rotom checks the Corviknight win condition on Antonio's end. For Antonio, he really wants to keep Amoonguss around because that is one of the best answers into the Rotom in the back. So, this next turn's interesting, yeah. Like, do you predict the Togekiss to go back out into Excadrill? It does stay in, and we saw Antonio call it correctly, so nice play to just offer a Sludge Bomb once again. That's actually going to be a ton of damage here.
Yeah, the Sludge Bomb too, and I also think that the moves that Antonio selected were really safe, because if Excadrill for some reason decided to come back in, then you had the potential Scald coming through onto the Togekiss slot as well. So really, really safe coverage from Antonio.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me. I'm actually very curious if Togekiss has a Fire-type attack, because if it does, then you could potentially max it. However, it's very, very risky to max. It stays asleep. Yeah, you don't want to max, you know, with so few turns of sleep taken. But yeah, this might just be a knockout onto the Togekiss. Gastrodon should be waking up this turn, and you know, Yuri's gotten some damage with Sludge Bomb off here, but Amoonguss can just heal all that back up with Regenerator. You get the knockout onto Togekiss. And now, how does Yuri actually deal with Amoonguss? Especially because Amoonguss can just switch out back in. And I think now Antonio has positioned himself perfectly for an Amoonguss plus Corviknight late game sweep.
Absolutely. Now that the Togekiss is gone, which was the biggest offensive threat on Yuri's team, I think that this is going to be a really tough battle for Yuri to come back from. You can, you know, try to knock out the Amoonguss. You can try to go after the partners that are partner Pokemon that Yuri has on his side of the field, but yeah, Antonio has really, really postured themselves perfectly in this game.
Yeah, this next turn, I think Antonio has so many different options, and that's kind of what happens when you have such a defensive team. There's just so many great defensive switches you can make at any given point. So I like the idea of conserving the Amoonguss. He recognizes, hey, Excadrill's not doing any damage into Corviknight. Amoonguss at worst can Spore that slot, but I have the Lumberry anyway. I'll eat it up, and then I can just knock out Amoonguss in the subsequent turn. Swords Dance looks a little bit scary here, but once again, Excadrill is just completely walled by Corviknight. Like, Corviknight is one of the best answers into Excadrill. Spore is going to go into the Gastrodon slot, so I think Yuri pretty much getting the best possible outcome this turn, but I think Antonio was totally fine with it playing out this way. And now what's really interesting is, do you consider just maxing Excadrill? Because how do you deal with the Corviknight, right? It's pretty much only the Rotom, or getting 2 Spores off into that slot, but I think that's relatively unlikely. So I think, yeah, now you keep Amoonguss healthy around as well, and if you have Amoonguss in the late game, Amoonguss plus Corviknight will just wall the Rotom super, super easily.
Definitely buys enough time for the Corviknight to dish out some big damage onto that Rotom while redirecting away attacks. So I'm really interested to see these next couple of turns, because if Antonio can secure a second knockout here, then I think that this is going to be a really good game for Antonio to be able to take us to a game 3. But Yuri opts to go for another Swords Dance onto the Excadrill, just really trying to outpace this Corviknight. especially knowing that bulk up is going to be a problem.
Yeah, once again, it's just X-Control has no good damage in a Corviknight. Even if you get to +6 attack, I'm really not sure how much damage you're doing. And I actually really love the bulk up decision there. It means that your Brave Birds are obviously stronger. It might just be a knock it onto Amoonguss the subsequent turn. The Lumberry, you know, saves Corviknight this turn, and because Amoonguss is so slow, it's unlikely you'll be able to get another Spore off. I like the decision to Swords Dance again on Yuri's end as well. He knows that the Excadrill on his end can survive any attack from the Gastrodon. If in fact that would actually activate the weakness policy. So now he's at +4 attack. Curious if actually now a high horsepower knocks out the Gastrodon, or whether the Gastrodon's so bulky you could even survive that. We know there's the Arcanine in the back as well, and I think that's actually really pivotal because Arcanine will be able to outspeed both the Excadrill and the Rotom in the back, so you could Will-O-Wisp and Snarl both of those respectively. So yeah, Antonio's hovering the bulk up option here, but I think that's a little bit risky. I feel like at this point you really just want to knock out the Amoonguss, because as soon as you KO that, you don't have to get, you know, worry about being put to sleep. And yeah, it looks like Antonio is going to offer that option. So Amoonguss could protect here. And Yuri's actually going to commit the Dynamax here, recognizes I really need to start picking up knockouts, and if I can just knock out everything around Corviknight, protect the Rotom, all I need is Rotom for, you know, 2 Thunderbolts to knock out Corviknight in this latest game. So I really like how Yuri played this, and if Amoonguss protects here, that would be huge as well.
That would be super, super heads up if Yuri is able to get a Protect off here. But it looks like Excadrill is going to go for the Max Quake first, so no Protect from this Amoonguss as the Max Quake goes into the Gastrodon, which is going to just be a one-hit knockout with those Swords Dance boosts.
Yeah, and you know, Amoongusses sometimes do carry Koba Berry as well. So if there's a Koba Berry or a Focus Sash, we'll probably be able to take this Brave Bird, and yeah, looks like it is the Koba Berry.
Yeah,
so
that's going to help out a lot for this Brave Bird. That's
Absolutely.
really, really big for Yuri's survival in second game. And I think this changes the tides just a little bit. Like, it looked like Antonio was in such a commanding position, but Yuri has been able to land this second Spore. So that's going to be Corviknight going to sleep. There's no Lumberry this time.
Yeah, and that's, I think, really nicely done on Yuri's end to just put on so much pressure with Excadrill getting 2 Swords Dances off, saying, I'm just going to ignore the Corviknight, all I need to do is knock out everything around the Corviknight. This is why I was thinking earlier, Antonio potentially had a play of, instead of switching out the Amoonguss, just Spore into the Excadrill, and then switch your partner Pokemon into Arcanine to get that Intimidate off, because then I don't even think a high horsepower and a Sludge Bomb knocks out Amoonguss. It might be a damage roll at that point, but if you can put the Excadrill to sleep, then I think Yuri pretty much has no chance into this. But Yuri playing fantastically by getting these Swords Dance boosts off, and now is in a position where, you know, Excadrill can just once again launch a Max Quake into the Arcanine slot. Now, Arcanine maybe can outspeed and go for a Will-O-Wisp, but it looks like this turn maybe content to just stall out another turn of Dynamax. Because once again, if you're able to stall out the Max, then Corviknight Amoonguss maybe has a pretty good, you know, time in this matchup. But I love this defensive switch. Or more offensive switch, I should say, going out into Rotom, because Rotom puts on so much pressure against this Corviknight.
Absolutely. We see the Arcanine go for the Protect. That's just going to be able to maybe stave off this Max Quake that's going to be coming through from this Excadrill. But after the Intimidate pop, and even with, oh my gosh, the Swords Dance boost as well. Whew, that Intimidate comes in huge. So much damage.
That is so much. Almost a one-hit knockout through Protect, which you don't see very often. There's another turn of Dynamax stalled out, but what do you even do here, right? I mean, you can go for, as Corviknight stays asleep too. It's critical there. I mean, like, Excadrill can just launch another Max Quake into Arcanine, even if you Will-O-Wisp into that slot. It's still going to be a knockout onto the Arcanine. You can just Thunderbolt into Corviknight. Antonio was just never in a position to actually be in a, like, click the Dynamax button, you know, and go from there. So this is really tough. I think, yeah, you have to Will-O-Wisp, and I mean, one question is, do you maybe just max the Corviknight immediately here just to survive? Even if you do, Corviknight does no damage into the Rotom. So I think, yeah, Antonio had an opportunity to put the Excadrill to sleep earlier in the game, and Yuri recognized that his win condition was just get a bunch of Swords Dances off and then sweep through all of Corviknight's partners while conserving Rotom, and I think Yuri in a very commanding position right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because this is really risky. Antonio is going to be going for the Dynamax here, and I'm really interested to see whether or not this is actually going to be able to play out. Yeah,
I mean, even by getting some damage off, like, Thunderbolt I'm pretty sure is still a 2-hit KO onto this Corviknight, right? Like, there were just no snarls, no light screens coming out, and I think Yuri recognizing I don't actually need a max Rotom, so Will-O-Wisp connects, you know, making Excadrill a little bit weaker here. This is still tough because, you know, once again, where's the damage coming from at this point, right? Max Quake here is going to still be able to knock out the Arcanine, and it's, once again, a Thunderbolt going out into Corviknight. Corviknight can do a little bit of damage. Of course, it's got that bulk up boost off, but Rotom doesn't care about these defense boosts. Thunderbolts still just do so much damage. But I think Antonio pretty much didn't have any other option at this point.
Yeah, Rotom goes for the Thunderbolts and does a lot of damage to this Corviknight. And Corviknight is still fast asleep. Antonio was really hoping for the wake up here just to be able to get off as much damage as possible into that Rotom. But Amoonguss coming back out did get a little bit of health back from that regenerator, but it is going to be really interesting to see whether or not this is actually going to be enough to buy enough time for this Corviknight to do its job against this Rotom.
Yeah, I mean, at least you have Amoonguss out now, and there is, I mean, Corviknight should, you know, finally wake up now, and the Excadrill is burnt, right? A miss there would have been so critical, because then I think Excadrill and Rotom freely can double up onto the Rotom slot. But, you know, what's tough here is you just go for the Rage Powder. I think Yuri could easily just go for a Thunderbolt and an Iron Head into the Corviknight slot to cover for the option of, you know, if the Amoonguss doesn't Rage Powder, you just knock out Corviknight, and even if it Rage Powders, like, you still have Rotom around. However, I mean, this is actually potentially winnable now, because I think from Antonio's end, it's all about the Amoonguss once again. Because Yuri gave up the Togekiss so early on, it's actually hard to do a lot of damage into the Amoonguss, and yeah, I think a great Protect here to recognize that Yuri at this point needs to target down the Amoonguss. You know, slightly risky, because if Rotom stayed in and a double up on a Corviknight, that just probably would have been a knockout. But instead, able to get this max Airstream off, able to hit the Amoonguss, that's a one-hit KO. So now, you know, is there enough damage to actually knock out Amoonguss? Because if not, it can just put you to sleep, and then the Corviknight can actually just slowly, you know, bounce its way through this game.
Yeah, this is actually huge. The tides have turned once again. And it's this late game that Antonio was trying to set up, this Amoonguss next to this Corviknight to really put on the pressure in the late game. Yuri is going to have Rotom back out on the field, but the one Thunderbolt wasn't enough to be able to knock out the... I don't even think it would be 2 hits to knock out this Corviknight with the Thunderbolt. Yeah,
with a little bit of chip damage from Excadrill, maybe. That's why I thought Yuri had a play of doubling up into Corviknight last turn, but I think Yuri might have been worried about Corviknight max guarding, and then Amoonguss just going for a Spore there. So Antonio is able to call it correctly, and that's actually really, really critical. I like the, you know, Protect from Rotom here. You don't want to get put to sleep, but Antonio, you know, able to actually outspeed now with these Airstreams and brilliant target into Excadrill. That's actually able to do a ton of damage, and so, you know, Yuri has not been getting these last couple of turns correctly, and Antonio's just been kind of one step ahead of him, which is kind of what he needs to do when, you know, you start the game kind of behind. So high horsepower here is going to connect, and that is going to do a lot of damage, and Spore is going to go into the Rotom, of course. So now, you know, Excadrill takes a little bit more of the burn damage. The Corviknight's max ends, and so now what you can do potentially is just launch another high horsepower into the Amoonguss and Thunderbolt into the Corviknight slot. The question is, can the Corviknight actually pick up a knockout onto the Excadrill at this point? Of course, it's faster, but I don't know. It's only got 1 stage of increased attack. I'm not sure an Iron Head is enough, so he might need a flinch to have a chance of winning this. Oh, does not pick up the knockout. Oh, the flinch!
Oh, but Excadrill flinches! Oh! Amoonguss gets the Spore off, too, into the Rotom, so Rotom's going to sleep this turn. No Thunderbolt coming out from Yuri's side of the field. Wow.
Needed a flinch or a crit there,
Antonio
and he gets
needed
it.
That.
Yeah, because if you don't get that, the Excadrill just knocks out the Amoonguss. And you know, these Airstream boosts actually making Amoonguss a little bit speedier as well. And means that the Rotom is not able to get a Thunderbolt off. And wow, I mean, Antonio going for the winning play there. You need to go for a flinch or a crit there. I think I like the decision to try to protect the Excadrill here. You know, try to just wake up with Rotom and dish out damage, as the Amoonguss is just gonna, you know, safely protect at this point. No reason to go for any other play. Oh my goodness, what a critical flinch there, though.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's just been so back and forth in this game alone. For moments, it looked like Yuri was in the driver's seat, and then Antonio took it right back. And now that we're in this end game, it's kind of been back and forth in these last couple of turns, even.
Yeah, but this is so tough now, I think, for Yuri, because Excadrill, I believe, will just faint from an Iron Head here, right? I think Yuri needed to hope to wake up last turn, maybe get a crit, but now all you have to do is Rage Powder, knock out the Excadrill, and then you can just Roost and Spore, and I think we're actually going to see Antonio take this off, that critical flinch. I mean, The flinch doesn't happen there. Excadrill is most likely knocking out Amoonguss, and then as soon as Amoonguss is out of the way, Rotom just cleanly knocks out Corviknight. So this is exactly why, you know, we were saying going into this game, it's so important to conserve this Amoonguss. The win condition is Amoonguss plus Corviknight. It's not just Corviknight. But if you have both of those, kind of just wall through all of Yuri's team.
Absolutely, and those max airstream boosts as well from Corviknight have played such a pivotal role in these last couple of turns as well. Just changing around which Pokemon are going to be moving first, and especially seeing that the Amoonguss moves first and the Hydro Pump misses. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, disastrous turn there. Get the Hydro Pump misses, the Sludge Bomb gets the critical hit, and Corviknight's able to heal all the way back up. So at this point, yeah, I think you can just go for damage at this point, and oh, man, I feel like both players played this game so well. They both recognize their win conditions, with Antonio kind of conserving the Amoonguss, and I love the aggressive sword stances from Yuri. I really like the switches as well. And I have to give credit to Antonio for that great Spore turn 1. Wasn't baited into targeting the Rotom slot, and in fact even got a better target with Togekiss coming in. But of course, you know, needed a little bit of good fortune there. I needed either a flinch, a crit, or maybe a miss from the Excadrill's end onto the Amoonguss. And the odds, I think, were in Yuri's favor going into that end game. But now, yeah, like you mentioned, the Airstream is allowing the Amoonguss to actually outspeed Rotom. I wasn't sure about that because, you know, a lot of Amoongusses will just run minimum speed. So even after these speed boosts, it typically doesn't do anything. But
oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait. This third game's going to be super exciting. And I am just kind of at the edge of my seat to see what's going to happen, as we do see Yuri lead with Togekiss and Excadrill, and Antonio leads with Corviknight and Amoonguss, the win condition of that second game.
So this is super interesting because, yeah, Yuri made the exact Togekiss adjustment that I think he needed to make. Now what's interesting is, do you consider maxing immediately, both with Togekiss and Corviknight? From Antonio's end, I think bulk up that he's, you know, deciding to hover for is a relatively safe play. Once again, the big question that I have is there a fire type attack on the Togekiss? Both of these players, however, have access to each other's team sheets, so I think Antonio definitely knows whether or not the Togekiss has a fire type attack. So yeah, I think going for the Dynamax is actually really interesting, because if you expect that Togekiss to max, what you can do is just get a lot of damage onto it. I love the protect here, and then you can switch out Amoonguss, and yeah, he calls it correctly. Antonio gets the bait out from Yuri, and with the speed boost, you know, be a little bit faster, but then the Togekiss now is an immediate threat of Steel Spikes from the Corviknight, so I think a fantastic play from Antonio this first turn.
Wow, and it's really interesting to see Antonio kind of switch it up after playing so defensively with this team, going for something that's going to be really offensive, just to be able to call this Dynamax from Yuri.
So he gets the Dynamax out, opts for the Airstream instead of a Steel Spike, but since Togekiss is most likely Airstream as well, I think Corviknight will still probably be slower, but even getting a single speed boost is important, because if you can ensure that you outspeed Rotom in the late game, I think that's actually a really critical component. So let's see if Yuri decided to just go for a Sword Stance here, which I think is relatively safe. It looks like he actually opted for the high horsepower, just wanted to guarantee a knockout onto Amoonguss, which is why I think that Protect is actually so clever. And Amoonguss actually has that Koba Berry as well, so it will not take very much damage at all here.
No, Protect plus the Berry, it's not going to be doing too much damage, but it's most important that Antonio is going to be getting through one of Yuri's turns of Dynamax and also able to fire back with a max Airstream of their own. So this is played out super beautifully for Antonio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, Yuri going for the double up there, knowing that Antonio has that Koba Berry, wants to guarantee to knock out the Amoonguss, because once again, Amoonguss has kind of been the win condition in previous games. But now Antonio surely recognizes, hey, I kind of need to conserve Amoonguss, and yep, he's going for exactly what I think he needs to, which is a switch. You see the Grimmsnarl in the back there as well, which I actually think is a great adjustment, just because screens add so much value. And Corviknight, once again, is the entire win condition here. You need it next to Amoonguss, though, so I think Antonio this turn should not get greedy, should definitely switch out that Amoonguss, because you basically need to just stall out these turns of Dynamax, and as soon as Togekiss faints, I think Amoonguss plus Corviknight basically beats Yuri's team. So great turn one there to not get baited and just, you know, take too much damage on Amoonguss, and Yuri now in a pretty difficult spot because he is not going to get very much out of his Dynamax. At best, maybe a knockout onto the Grimmsnarl. I like the Sword Stance here, you know, start getting some increased stages of attack, and there's no reason to not Sword Stance there because Airstream's knocking out Amoonguss anyway, but it's still going to be tough, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Max Airstream going into the Grimmsnarl now does a little bit over half damage, so that does put Grimmsnarl in range of a second knockout. And now the Max Steel Spike comes through too, just to be able to fire off into this Togekiss, and Togekiss still survives, so it's able to take that one pretty handedly. But it's still been a massive battle between these two Pokemon.
Yeah, and once again, I think Antonio certainly doesn't mind this trade-off because all you need to do, KO Togekiss, and then, okay, the upside for Yuri is, once again, the Swords Dance on Excadrill keeps him in this, right? Because the Swords Dance at least allows you to boost up multiple times, and after 2 Swords Dances, you maybe can actually pick up the one-hit KO onto Amoonguss. So I think Antonio recognizing this, going for the taunt onto Yuri's end, but Excadrill could protect here. It doesn't protect, though, which means that this Excadrill has to attack for the subsequent turns, which is a really big deal. Can Swords Dance, can protect, and I think that is a fantastic play from Antonio's end. Yuri could have called that out by going for a protect and a Starfall, but opts to not do so.
Yeah, that's going to be really big. Even though Yuri does get the knockout on the Grimmsnarl, this has played out so well for Antonio, and it's just been kind of these heads-up plays of going for the taunt, recognizing what Yuri's win conditions are, and really trying to mitigate that possibility. So Antonio is going to be able to secure the knockout onto Yuri's Togekiss, and that's Dynamax now gone for Yuri.
One thing that was actually really cool is Antonio just not going for Steel Spike on turn 1. I think he probably recognizes that it's not doing over 50% anyway, so you need to kind of weave in a max Airstream at that point. And so by going for it once again, depending on how it's trained, I think it'll probably outspeed the Rotom or any other Pokemon in the back from Yuri's end, unless he brought Dragapult, which I don't think really ever comes out in this matchup. So I think that's a fantastic trade-off for Antonio's end, right? You're able to knock out the Togekiss, which is the biggest threat to Amoonguss, and you still have Amoonguss in the back. And the Excadrill is taunted. So Gastrodon comes out now, and this is interesting because with Amoonguss, at least you could have threatened with Rage Powder. So I'm actually a little bit surprised to see Gastrodon come out immediately. But, from Yuri's end now, you've got Corviknight with a bunch of defense boosts. You've got the speed boost as well. You're not doing very much damage, though, which is kind of part of the problem. So he's opting, as you see, for the Iron Head here. So, probably deciding to try to double up onto the Gastrodon and just pick up a knockout onto it. From Yuri's end, you can go for a double up onto the Corviknight with something like a Thunderbolt and an Iron Head, just do as much damage as possible. You obviously can't touch the Gastrodon with Rotom. And Yuri actually switches out the Excadrill.
Ooh. So it's going to be Amoonguss, and that's not going to be something that Yuri might be happy with because of this Brave Bird that comes through. I mean, we did see the berry before onto this Amoonguss, so it's going to be able to mitigate some of the damage that's coming through, but that's a pretty big amount of damage.
Yeah, nice decision to go for the Brave Bird there instead of going for an Iron Head as well. Thunderbolt comes out and it does so much damage, but it's not enough for a knockout.
No, it's not. The Earth Power now to follow up the Brave Bird into the Amoonguss does a little over half to the Amoonguss so far. But really critically, Corviknight's able to stick around for another turn.
Yeah, and this is super interesting because you can Roost and maybe switch out into the Amoonguss in the back. Looks like Antonio is thinking about just going on the offensive though, which is super interesting because I think Gastrodon is actually a pretty good late game win condition at this point. Opts for the Iron Head onto Rotom though, maybe predicting a protect from the Amoonguss. So the Corviknight's actually just gonna go down here, which is once again why I thought Amoonguss kind of needed to be next to it, because I thought it was kind of like, the late game win condition. Spore comes out, but oh, the Misty Terrain.
Oh no, Earth Power going to be able to fire off after Amoonguss just whips the Spore. But for Antonio, Corviknight's gone. All you have left is Gastrodon and Amoonguss.
Yeah, but I think Gastrodon is actually a fantastic late game win condition from Antonio's, and I think Yuri went for the Spore there most likely into the Corviknight slot to cover for the option of it roosting. So just doubling up onto that slot, the Amoonguss isn't going to do anything else at this point anyway. So, Antonio is still in a really great spot with the Gastrodon because you can just Earth Power into the Amoonguss slot relatively freely and say Spore into the Rotom. So if Yuri wants to win this one, it's about positioning Amoonguss now next to the Excadrill and maybe getting a Swords Dance off. But I think this time around, actually, I love letting Antonio recognize Gastrodon is actually a pretty good late game win condition as well, especially because the Amoonguss does not have a grass type attack. The Rotom is completely useless right now, and the Excadrill has gotten rid of its boosts. So yeah, Yuri gonna opt for the switch out into the Excadrill, and I think I really like this if you protect the Amoonguss, because then you can Rage Powder and Swords Dance the subsequent turn, and there's the protect.
Really good setup from Yuri just to be able to get the Swords Dance off for next turn. As we do see the Spore come through just in case that Rotom stuck around on the field, but that's not going to be what happens here, and Yuri now in a much better position.
Yeah, I think needed to get that turn correctly, and he absolutely nails it. So now Yuri can just go for a Rage Powder and a Swords Dance. It is the last turn of Misty Terrain, though, right? So then the Amoonguss can just spore the Excadrill into subsequent turn. From Antonio's end, all you have to do right now is knock out the Excadrill, and you'll win the game. So if you're able to put it to sleep, that's huge, too. I really actually like this defensive switch out to conserve the Regenerator onto the Amoonguss. So yeah, going for a really, really aggressive play there, switching out, healing back up with the Regenerator, and getting the Swords Dance as well.
Yeah, Sludge Bomb going to come through onto the Rotom, so with the critical hit as well, that's going to be a decent truck. And the Poison, too! Ooh.
I think Antonio actually going for a really great play here, though, right? He went for the Sludge Bomb, and he actually opts for the Recover. So Sludge Bomb would have covered the Amoonguss switch out, but Gastrodon had the option to attack into the Excadrill, but, doesn't want to go for a Scald or an Earth Power to potentially activate a Weakness Policy. Now what's really interesting is with Misty Terrain gone, you can cleanly Spore into the Excadrill. However, Antonio's playing super aggressive here. Looks like he's reading into an Excadrill Protect, maybe expecting Rotom to Thunderbolt. That being said here, I think your play is to either protect the Amoonguss or Spore, but it looks like he's going to go on the offensive and just double up onto the Rotom slot. And, he does not call correctly. Excadrill just gets the high horsepower off.
Oh, and Rotom able to go for the Thunderbolt as well, so Amoonguss, hangs on, though.
It hangs on, but, now the Excadrill in a prime position for this late game has those boosts off, hasn't taken any damage, and now Amoonguss can't heal back up. So, yeah, Yuri needed to look for that Swords Dance play, and he gets it. And Antonio playing a little bit passive, reading really, really hard into some of these Protects, but isn't able to call it Protectly, and brilliant Protect here from the Excadrill as well. Super safe, because all Yuri needs to do right now is Thunderbolt into the Amoonguss and pick up a knockout. So, the Misty Terrain actually timing perfectly in this game as well, as Antonio was not able to just freely Spore into the Excadrill. And that was what was so critical, because if you put the Excadrill to sleep, it's most likely game over here.
Yeah, Rotom was hoping to be able to fire up one more attack, so I think Antonio calling that correctly as well and going for the Protect, I think, gives him just a little bit more of a chance. Now that Rotom has gone down, but Yuri still has an Amoonguss that had that Regenerator health come back in to play, so Excadrill's sitting pretty.
Yeah, it really is, and it's protected last turn as well, so now you can go for it. And he goes for a double Protect, but it doesn't get it.
Oh, doesn't get it.
Excadrill connects the Iron Head. I mean, maybe you can win here if, Gastrodon targets the Excadrill, gets a critical hit, but actually it's just slower than the Amoonguss anyway, so that makes it significantly tougher, because now all you have to do is Rage Powder with the Amoonguss and high horsepower. And so this is why I was kind of surprised to see Gastrodon switch out earlier, when Antonio had kind of found himself in this great setup where he gets the Taunt off into the Excadrill, he gets the Corviknight to cleanly knock out as well. So I thought you could really just switch in Amoonguss there, and at that point just click like Rage Powder with the Amoonguss and target the Excadrill slot. So I was really surprised to see Gastrodon come out, and I think it kind of punishes Antonio here in this late game. And by not reading into the Protect and Swords Dance play now, actually Yuri doesn't want to risk it, wants to just try to land one high horsepower instead of two. So going for the safe Rage Powder Swords Dance play. And talk about a comeback. I mean, I thought like Antonio had great early game positioning in this game and set himself up for this excellent late game, but never able to actually deal much damage into the Excadrill.
Yeah, this is just such a safe play now coming out from Yuri, going for the Rage Powder, then able to connect the high horsepower onto the Gastrodon too, and that's going to clean it up. This series goes to our invitational winner, Alessio Yuri Baschetto.